welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. Hope all are doing well. And I need to make an apology. Yesterday, I said somebody called me an a-hole. It was actually they were commenting on a post above, calling them an a-hole for coming after me with my truth. So my sincerest apologies. Golan, for you, there needs to be a clarification since you're the one that brought it up. And the greater one sent me a message since she was listening to the show, so she needed to correct you. And she wrote, please note that the Supreme Court case does not give Obama absolute immunity. This is from Mark Levin. The case addresses absolute
Mend
immunity.
is the one who brought that up, not me. Sorry, Julie. I'm going to have to go ahead and direct you towards the handsome one.
So
I'll take the blame for that one. And
okay,
thank
so
you,
let me
Julie,
finish
for the
this up.
correction.
Let me finish this up. So go on. Yes, I will go to Mend first. The case addresses absolute immunity, presumptive immunity, and no immunity. A president is protected under absolute immunity for official duties. A president is protected under absolute immunity for official duties as president. If actions are taken at the periphery of those, there was presumptive immunity. There is no immunity if a president acts outside his duties, such as if he robs a bank. Obama's actions would actually give rise to presumptive immunity, which means he should be investigated. Following an investigation, he may not actually be afforded immunity. Mark Levin has spoken several times about this. He spoke about it on Life, Liberty, and Levin either last weekend. Anyways, you get the point, Mend. So you were corrected by the greater one.
There's no greater honor than to be corrected by the genius that is Julie Strauss-Levin.
I am a little disappointed that I didn't say it, because then I would have been able to be reprimanded.
But, Mend, I want to bring up a bigger point with this, and I keep on going back to this point, and it's the hybrid war. We are getting annihilated with hybrid warfare. And I'm not just referring to Israel, but I'm referring to America, referring to Trump's platform. We're getting decimated, and I don't know why. It's like it seems like every time we catch up a little bit to how the left acts, they're just 5 steps ahead of us as far as X goes, as far as social media goes, as far as Instagram goes or TikTok, all of it, man. We always seem to be behind.
We know that the right has a messaging problem. We've been talking about that forever. They can't get their message out because the media has been captured by the left. So, what do you do with this? Judah came up with a great solution. I think the White House press briefing should be done at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. every single day. And that would cut into all of the major programming. I think that's one way to get it out there. And the other thing is that they should reprimand some of these news outlets that don't report accurately or just don't report. So if CBS and ABC wants to run their lefty talking point spin, they should be disinvited from the White House press briefing rooms, and they should give those spots to more independent journalists like Matt Taibbi, people that actually care about news and they have journalistic integrity. Aside from that, I mean, it's really tough. You have George Soros buying up all of those radio stations, which is the last kind of stronghold that the conservatives had. And I know he's doing it with the Latin stations, a lot of Spanish speaking stations, but that's where the right has made the most gains. If you look at the redistricting that is going on in Texas, what they realized is that a lot of the Spanish speaking voters have shifted to the right. They are now conservatives. They are not into open borders and all of this DEI stuff and the trans stuff. They're not interested in it. They have conservative values. They are Christians and Catholics, and they don't want that stuff. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Well said, and I agree with you 100%, but Golan, we also have billionaires, and this has been a complaint of mine with Republican billionaires, is where and how they spend their money. And I used to say it with Sheldon Adelson, and I'll say it again, and this is not an affront or an offense to anybody like Bill Ackman or any of them, but there are a group of billionaires that have a heavy online presence that need to spend as much money as humanly possible, whether it's creating bot farms or whatever it is, or spending money on influencers.
So you just mentioned something that I think highlights the problem. Much like when a couple has a bad person and a good person married, the bad person cheats, right? The good person was not prepared to cheat. They're prepared to try and stop their wife from cheating, or try to fix the marriage, or try to repair the rift. They're always on the back foot. And this is just the way of the world. The evil people are going to be using tactics that good people are simply not going to use, and good people are not prepared to use. And in this case, when you're looking at the people that we are going up against, whether it's in domestic policy, whether it's in foreign policy, whether it's in wars, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's anywhere, the people who are willing to do underhanded things, to lie, to put out a photo that looks like Mother Mary holding Jesus, but it's actually a kid who has a deformity, and then lying about who it is, to make up numbers of dead people, to send over to the Washington Post tens of thousands of kids supposedly who were murdered, even though most of them are probably fictional or were combatants themselves. All of that stuff, that is the playground of evil. So if you're asking good people to prepare themselves to preemptively do things kind of in an underhanded way, or in a way that would be defensive to something that they can't anticipate, it's difficult. You know, I remember a friend of mine, he got cheated on in his marriage. And I remember him saying, I feel terrible. And she left, and she's with her new boyfriend now. And there's a part of me that wishes I'd been the one who cheated. I'd been the one who was a shitty person, because then I would have won. But there's nothing I could have done to anticipate that she would have destroyed our marriage and broken her vow. We're in the same situation here. So to ask Bill Ackman or whoever it is to start using all of the same tactics, bot forms and everything else, I agree with you. But it's difficult to anticipate that stuff when you are a moral person. And what ends up happening is you're always in the defensive position. You're always on the back foot.
It's more a Republican RNC issue than a billionaire issue. The Democrat, that machine that they have is really well run. I mean, right now it's rudderless and they're leaderless and all of that, but the money machine and the messaging machine that they have in place runs autonomously. You have the speaking heads like Joey Behar and Joy Reid and The View and Rachel Maddow, and you go on and on and on. There are so many of them out there on so many different networks. And then you look at CNN, and then you look at ABC and NBC and CBS. All of them are way left leaning. So you don't even have a foothold. I mean, you have Fox that hates Trump. What else is there? There are a couple of other stations. I don't even know what they are. So it's a messaging problem, but it's also from the top down, the leadership. Like, I remember in the last campaign, they spent a ton of money. I think it was on text messages. The guy out of Texas that was the leader of their tech division blew all this money. They got nothing for it. Zero results.
So you're talking about 2022.
Yes.
And listen, they did learn from their mistakes in many ways. Lara Trump and God, I have his name on the tip of my tongue, that runs the RNC, are doing actually amazing work. When you look at comparisons, Trump spent $330 million on the campaign. Harris spent at least $1.6 billion. I just want to counter both of you a little bit, Golan, because people like Reid Hoffman, these people have poured billions into super PACs and hundreds of millions and billions into super PACs and all these different things, preemptively striking. Okay. Bill Ackman, who I love. This isn't a knock on Bill Ackman. He's got the acumen to see, or should see, Golan, especially with what he does financially, of what the trends of the future are. Get ahead of it. It's not that difficult to think of and see what's actually coming. Look, let's use this as an example, Golan. We see now there's a mayor of New York City who's a person who might win and become the next mayor, probably will win. And so there's a trend. Get ahead of that next trend is all I'm trying to say, Golan.
Which is all well and good. But again, how are you going to do that? So let's use what Men was just talking about. The entire media infrastructure is in place. And those people, whether we're on the right or on the left, I think we can all admit they're willing to lie. We all know that Trump, just to use the Charlottesville thing, did not say the things that they said he said. And they all in lockstep said that he did. Now, how could anyone have anticipated that they were going to create a lie and all of them were going to repeat it verbatim, to the point where then, instead of being able to go, oh, wait, this wasn't even a fight that I was prepared to have to battle. You just made something up and now everybody thinks it's true. I have no choice but to be in the defensive position and say, I didn't say that, right? There's nothing you could have done to anticipate that move. This situation with Mamdani is a good example. The guy you're talking about in New York, the jihadi wannabe mayor. Yeah, I think it's very likely that he is going to win. And what they've done is they have put in place over a long period of time, just like the Islamists do over a long period of time. They slowly plant all of these seeds. What did they plant here? Wokeness is the only way that you can get ahead within the Democratic Party. And if you are not woke enough, as men pointed out the other day, then even if you try to go woke, you're still going to get kicked out. Jamal Bowman will still kick you out. And so little by little, they made that just the platform of the party. And that means that if you say anything racist, you're in trouble. And then they equated Islam with race, even though it's not. And then they equated Islamophobia with racism, which it's not. Little by little, they established all of these things. I watched a video with Christopher Hitchens. Of course, he's dead. So it was an old video. And he was saying this term that they've just introduced, Islamophobia, you're going to see this used until suddenly if you say something about it, they will call you a racist. And I was like, oh my God, the guy saw it coming. So there are certain people out there who might see that coming, but that is not something that you can prepare for in the way that you're talking about. And so now when Mamdani walks in, and he says, oh, wait, you're criticizing me, Islamophobia. Uh-oh, everybody in the Democratic power structure shuts up. Even the people on the right side have to be like, no, it's because you said that word, jihad, or you said antifada. And they're like, no. Over the last 3 years, we've established that antifada and jihad are okay things to say. And from the river to the sea means something else. How could you have anticipated any of these things? They're insane.
I don't think it's as difficult as you're saying when we have actually. So I'll give you the example, Menda, right now of somebody like Tucker Carlson or all the grifters, all these. I mean, Tucker Carlson is right now the king of insanity. We know that he is going to be as anti-Israel and anti-American as at this point as humanly possible. I mean, listen, he had a guest on who is a total fraud, who then Bernie Sanders picked up on and everybody else picked on, this guy Tony Aguilar, who supposedly witnessed killings of Gazans by a U.S. aid program, not AID, but the program that they set up, and he was fired. He was fired from it, and they've showed evidence that he's absolutely lying. They've debunked it, but if we know that this is the trend and the pace of what's going on, we have to set up immediately things to counter that before we know before it happens. So before Tucker's next episode comes out, there should be a machine in place ready to fight and combat whatever Holocaust denier, sympathizer he's going to have on.
So to Judah's point of what could be done with guys like Tucker and all this stuff, and this guy with the GHF stuff who's come out, GHF actually released his signal chats where they show that he was begging to come back. He was fired. He was no good. He was unstable. And he threatened them. And he said, if you guys don't let me come back, I'll open up hell on you and da-da-da. So now he's out there smearing them and all of that stuff.
By the way, it is always easy to find one disgruntled employee who will talk shit. And if that's all they're doing over and over again, look, they go, hey, we found a guy from the Israeli government, and he said there's no evidence that Hamas is stealing aid. It's like you found one asshole.
Turn on CNN, turn on any of those news outlets any day, and that's what they have. To Judah's credit, what we could be doing, there's a lot that could be done. So if there was a war room set up, and you know what guest is going to be on Tucker, which demented anti-American Nazi lover is going to be on next, you could gear up for sure. There could be something that is geared up. John Mersheimer. You dig up all the nonsense, all the idiotic things that he said, everything that's been debunked. You get it all ready. You get it all queued up. And as soon as that episode comes out, you have an army that starts posting that stuff on every single one of those clips, right? On his.
But didn't we try that when Rogan had a bunch of people on that were debunked, useless people that were Jew haters and Holocaust deniers and, saying Churchill's the villain of World War II and all this ridiculous garbage? We had all that. It didn't change anything because, again, that is an after the fact thing. If we are talking about, like the New York Times retracting their photo story, 55 million people saw the story. Last count, 90,000 people saw the retraction. 55 million to 90,000.
Yeah. Well, it looks like I saw Alan Dershowitz telling them they should sue the New York Times.
And this is, again, my point is when our influencers are all above the age of 70 that are getting massive airplay, this is a problem that conservatives have. And they are not putting in a concerted effort. They wasted a lot of it with that stupid binder thing at the beginning of Epstein handing it out to supposed influencers. And we're not using the influencers enough. I mean, I could scream about this all day long. Are we ever going to beat them at this? Almost certainly not. Can we make inroads with them? 100% yes. The original source of Tucker Carlson on his march towards Nazism was continually bringing up people in the Jewish community that, oh, we only started caring about what was said after October 7th, which is a total fallacy. There have been many of us that have been screaming about this for years.
But also, what kind of argument is that anyway? Who cares? Who cares? The idea that something feels like there's stasis and feels like it's constant. And yeah, we got a bunch of Nazis out there. We don't have to always comment on the Nazis. And then suddenly they came and raped and murdered 1,200 people. And a bunch of people started marching on behalf of the rapists. And we started going, uh-oh, we better mobilize. How does that make us anything but who we are? That's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard anyway.
That's right. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's no reason for people to not speak up when you see something like that happening. And, putting together a better machine to counter some of the insanity that's coming out from the left and the right, that should be done. That could be done. And it should be coming down from top leadership in the Republican Party.
I don't think it's a Republican Party. I really don't. It's these super PACs that need to get together. It's the people that actually have a lot of power and influence have to get together. I know everybody thinks we have a secret cabal, but I'm sorry to inform you, look at what's going on. I think if we did have a secret cabal going on where we meet up every Friday night at, Temple Beth, We Love Jews Only, you would not see what you are witnessing right now. So I think
this is the fallacy of all of it, isn't it? If we really controlled the media, would we watch CNN and the New York Times destroying us on a daily basis? If we really controlled the government, would we have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene ranting about whatever her Nazi propaganda is? It's all ludicrous. And every time they try to flip the narrative to make it seem like we're in control, they're just saying the things that are happening. It's like every complaint is a confession. So the whole thing is silly.
Listen, let's move on to Starmer in England, Wales, and the UK in 2023. Muhammad was the number one name for children being born. In 2025, I believe, or 2024, Yahya, after Yahya Sinwar, moved up 33 spots in the top 100 of names in the UK, and he also coincidentally lowered the voting age to 16 years old. That is
They're trying to do that. They're trying to do that.
They're trying to do that, yeah. And I have a feeling it will pass.
Well,
but
and he's also pushing that Islamophobia law, quote unquote Islamophobia law, shielding quote unquote religious criticism. And there's 1,000 things that they're doing now as a result of kowtowing to the Islamist base in the UK. It's something that you're watching, not just Starmer, but the entire party obsessed with protecting Muslim votes, even if it's at the cost of ignoring real Islamist threats. And it's just straight up pandering over principles. There's no other way to put it. You're watching the breakdown of that society.
Well, the Labour Party in the UK is very similar to the Democratic Party in the US. They are putting these foreigners that have come to that country ahead of their own citizens. They're protecting the foreigners and the rights of these foreigners. And when I say rights, I'm talking about you can't criticize Islam, but if you say a Christian prayer anywhere in the UK, that's it. They'll arrest you. They went up to one guy who was standing outside of an abortion clinic. He was down the street and he was silent. And they said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm praying in my head." Wasn't saying the words. And they arrested him for praying in his own head. They are sending out flyers to people that live close to these abortion clinics saying that you cannot pray for the dead babies in your own home because that'll violate the UK law, the whatever law they have about killing babies. Not to mention that a lot of their cities are now run by Islamists. And that is
correct.
I heard Charlie Kirk talking about this the other day, how Islam is not compatible with the West. And It's because Islam in the religious doctrine, it states that they need to conquer. That is a fundamental part of the religion. It's not to coexist. It's not to live in peace side by side. It is to conquer. They need to take over the lands. And once a land is taken, it's never allowed to be given back, which is why they have such a problem with Israel. People don't get it. That is the fundamental core of why they hate Israel, because they conquered that land. They came in as colonizers and they conquered it, and then they lost it. And that is the biggest affront to them in their core. They can't stand that. It's not just that the West is in their midst. That's a tiny little part of it. It's that they are not allowed to give up land. They are supposed to conquer and take over and force people to convert. That's why there's a sword on all of their flags. That's why this tiny little religion that came out of the Arabian Peninsula took over half the globe. That's how it is.
By the way, it's really important for people to understand that. They're like, oh, it's the fastest growing religion. And part of it is that they breed like rats to make, and that it's part of actually their cultural rules, right? Your job is to continue to pump out babies because the sheer numbers are going to be kind of overwhelming to the point where you don't have to fire a shot, but you're still waging a war. And the other thing is, every single time, and we're watching it happen all over the globe right now, even though Marjorie Taylor Greene won't say a word when Christians are slaughtered, every time they go in and take over, they either murder you or they force you to convert. That's why the numbers are so massive, because they did that to country after country after country until there was nothing left except for Islam. And it's the same thing they're trying to do today.
You could actually compare it to the Druze in Syria and Lebanon and Israel. So Druze, the Druze is a tribe. They're almost as old as Islam. So it's an offshoot of Islam and they have their own customs. But they are forbidden from converting people to their religion. You're not allowed to join it. And there's only about 800,000 of them today. While there's how many billion Muslims today? I mean, that's a clear, if you wanted to see two trajectories of different religions just based on ideology of how you convert and gain followers, Islam would be whatever it is, 1 million people today, if had it not had this doctrine that you must chop people's heads off if they don't convert, and colonizing and taking over and converting people.
And rape and rape and rape.
I do want to point out is that there's a shift, and I talked about this yesterday. The shift is that the moderate Sunni Muslim nations like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all of those countries, they're moving away from that. They are moving towards a very coexistence-friendly version of Islam, which existed in the past, but you've had it. It's been hijacked and taken over by these radical clerics, and you're seeing the moderate Sunni Islams, the Gulf states, as we call them, they are moving to a way more moderate stance, coexistence, and it's great. And you're seeing the radicalization shift to Europe, to Central South America. You're seeing it there.
Yeah. And Judah, to your point, I just wanted to point out one more thing before we move on from this topic. The idea of how can we combat this? One thing that makes Islam specifically difficult to combat is that there is no half measure within Islam. It is only full capitulation. There's no way to appease the monsters with negotiations. The same reason why Hamas keeps walking away from the table when it comes to negotiations for a ceasefire agreement. New York Times ran that fake story. 55 million people saw it. Untold damage was done. Then they ran that tiny little on a side chat, clarification or whatever they called it, which hardly anybody saw. And immediately, New York Times lies, Gaza dies, is spray painted. They defaced the entire New York Times building. Farmer said, I will recognize a Palestinian state. But he did say, I would like there to be a two-state peace process. And what happened? Labor offices were targeted because it wasn't enough. It wasn't just hand it all over. AOC has been nonstop on the side of Gaza, but she voted against cutting U.S. funding for the Israeli Iron Dome because it's defensive, and her office was vandalized with red paint. It's never enough unless it is all of it. So when you're dealing with someone like that, just a monstrous person who will gobble up everything with no compromise, it is hard to prepare ahead of time because you have to get into their mentality to do it. That's why Trump is so successful, because Trump can act like a gangster. He can understand the other side. He can say, I know how to manipulate this particular despot. But there are very few people like Trump out there, and we need more of them. And to your point, the more we have them, the more we'll be able to anticipate and do defensive measures ahead of time.
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, one of the best editors in the United States, Ben Boychuk, and we were talking about Rubio. And I do believe Rubio is the best Secretary of State that we've had in our lifetimes, that's for sure. We have to give him a tremendous amount of credit, especially yesterday, as everybody is coming on board with this asinine two-state thing. Rubio banned Abbas from coming here, and they started sanctioning the Palestinian Authority. And we got to give these people so much credit for it. That's actually a preemptive strike. That's actually a preemptive thing to do is, well, you're not allowed to come here. You could have all these jackasses talking about some supposed state, but we're not going to allow the people in that you think you want it for. So great for Rubio.
They've been violating our laws for a long time. They've been violating the Taylor Force Act, and Abbas, the leader of the PA, Palestinian Authority, pays Palestinians who kill Israelis, who kill foreigners, who kill Americans. They give them a lifelong stipend. You get a pension if you kill, and the more you kill, or the more people you kill, the more you get. And these are the people that they're saying we should be making peace with. As far as Hamas and a ceasefire, they just walked away from the table. Hamas just turned down the latest Witkoff offer for a ceasefire. Right after that happened, Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, came out and made the following statement. If there isn't a ceasefire by this and this date, if the war isn't over and there isn't a ceasefire, I'm going to recognize a Palestinian state. So what that does is it gives Hamas a timeline and says, all you got to do is hold on to those hostages until September. Just hold on to the hostages until September, and then you'll get a state. But if you give up the hostages before then, you might not get a state. How moronic is that?
Well, it's not just that. Golan. Hamas came out yesterday and he's using these talking points. They're using the starvation tactic talking points. They're actually coming out and saying exactly what the UK and France and Australia and every one of these sack of crap nations is coming out saying. Hamas is using their talking points. So congratulations to all of you people. You actually are killing the hostages, and you're killing any chance of any sort of, I don't think there's ever going to be a deal, but you're giving them talking points.
By the way, you know who called that out? Rubio. Rubio called that out. He said, if I'm Hamas, I say, this is his quote, you know what? Let's not allow there to be a ceasefire. If Hamas refuses to agree to a ceasefire, it guarantees a Palestinian state we recognized by all these countries in September. He sees it, and he out loud said the thing that other people are clumsily trying to trip around. And I love him for that, by the way. And I agree with you 100% that Rubio is the best Secretary of State in our lifetime. I told you guys yesterday, I think he would have been a tremendous vice president. I think he's going to continue to rise until he gets there on his own and maybe higher. And I will be there supporting him too.
He'd actually be wasted if he was vice president.
It's interesting because I was really rooting for him for that, but you're 100% right. I was thinking about it yesterday. We wouldn't have this kind of moral fortitude and testicular fortitude where he needs to be sitting, and he has been displaying it daily.
I'm on board. I like Rubio. I like him a lot.
Judah, to your point about Hamas using the language of the West against the West, this is not new. They were taught to do this by the Nazis, who they allied with during World War II. For those of you who don't realize that, they actually did. You can go online and look at all the pictures of the Islamists standing right alongside and Heil Hitlering, literally next to Hitler. And they learned this. There was a tactic that was done when they were trying to get everybody to hate the Jews. They didn't just do a blanket statement. They didn't print one page of Jew hatred and then send it out to everybody. They tailored that hatred to whoever they were talking to. They said, I'm going to identify what problem they have in their society and figure out how the Jews are at fault for that specific thing. And this group over here has a totally different problem. I'm going to figure out how the Jews can be scapegoated for that particular thing. So they tailored it. And that's what the Palestinians are doing today. So now they know that they can go to a Christian country, which America is becoming more and more of, and the world in general is it dovetailed away into atheism. It's coming back into Christianity, as my friend Guy Goldstein, who has been on our show, wrote in a recent article. That's why they're using the Mother Mary holding the Jesus baby imagery. They know that that is the thing that's going to inflame tension as much as it will be for starvation, everything else. They are tailoring their rage and their hatred exactly to whoever it is they need to speak to. And that's why they're doing that, Judah. That's why they're copy pasting off of the Western leaders' statements.
You know, man, yesterday on CNN, you had this host, Becky Anderson. She said, yeah, the baby is still malnourished, when we know this to be 100% not true. In fact, I believe the mother said he's completely nourished. And again, they cropped out the other photo. So let me ask you a question. You're the wizard of advertising, and you're the wizard of all these different things. Why not billboards on Times Square? Why not billboards all across America? And not just about the Israel issue, about what they're trying to do to Christianity, the Christians that have been killed. Why not take the message to the streets and go old school? Okay, so yeah, we're losing the digital war, but why not? You know, I said before the elections, they should put up big billboards of how many, like the old smoking ads, how many people are dying each day, how many immigrants are getting each day. And put up things like, you know, nobody entered the border today. This is what's going on over here with these starving people. Why not flood the markets across America?
It's a good point. I mean, we definitely should be getting more messaging out as far as his baby starving and what. I mean, there's a lot going on there. Obviously, they cropped out his healthy brother, and a lot of the other mothers that are dealing with supposedly starving kids are all healthy, if not obese. So I think they have documented of 12 different kids that they're using in these images, and they all have either muscular dystrophy or cerebral palsy. I mean, they have serious illnesses that predated the war. Does that mean that these kids didn't need some specific special vitamins that they weren't getting because of the war? Probably. Both things could be right. But what's wrong is using that image to try to paint the entire country as that's what's happening to the children. That's where it's morally reprehensible, what the New York Times did. You know, if you could talk about the food strategy where Israel cut off aid after the last ceasefire broke down, and they said, we're not going to send in any more aid. From a tactical standpoint, I think that was a mistake, because if you're going up against Hamas, who literally wants more dead Palestinians, and you say, we're going to cut off aid until you release the hostages. They're not releasing the hostages. Then you're going to keep the aid cut off until what? Like, Israel figured, they knew that there was enough food in Gaza to last them for 6 months, because after the previous ceasefire, they flooded it with food. Right? During that ceasefire, they flooded it with food, and they go, even if we cut off the food right now, they'll have enough for 6 months. They miscalculated because a lot of people hoarded, and there's gangs and there's clans. So some people had and some people don't have. That is true. There are people in Gaza that are hungry, and there are other people that are obese. All of those things are correct. We don't need to make up a narrative to make our side be right. The truth is the truth. That said, the idea of playing chicken with Hamas over starvation was a losing proposition. The better way to do it is you flood Gaza with so much food that Hamas can't sell it for anything, that everybody could just get it for free everywhere. That's the other way to counter the Hamas profiteering off of the food aid. So I think they realize that it's getting dangerous. There is some hunger in some locations, and there's abundance of food in other locations, and they're taking the proper steps to mitigate that. But the fallout from this whole narrative, which is mostly bullshit, is that you have all of these woke countries now piling on top of Israel with these ridiculous demands, not making any demands on Hamas. Don't forget, when Keir Starmer made that ultimatum for the Israelis that the war must end, or I'm going to recognize a Palestinian state, he made zero demands of Hamas, the guys who started the war and the guys that are holding the hostages and the guys that have killed UK citizens. That's who we're talking about. This guy, I mean, you talk about a failure of leadership, incompetence. That's who these people are. Macron and Starmer and every single one of these other idiotic fools that are just making the situation worse. They're not helping the Gazans. Declaring a Palestinian state is going to do absolutely nothing for Gaza. It's a declaration. It's a piece of paper. It's not going to end the war. If you wanted to end the war, the proper statement would be, Keir Starmer would come out and say, if the hostages are not back and Hamas doesn't surrender by this and this date, we're going to authorize the Israelis to annex half of Gaza. You're going to lose half your land. Now go. That
Or
would
you
be
could
the
do
proper
what the
statement.
Germans are doing. The Germans met with the hostage families, and they said, we would like there to be a ceasefire. They are still on the two-state solution thing, so fine, whether I agree or disagree on that front, I'm going to put aside for a moment, because what they said was, we would like to be able to make a statement about a Palestinian state, but we will not do that unless all the hostages are released and Hamas steps down and relinquishes power. The aims of this particular war
Yes.
have been very, very clearly dictated since day one. And they're saying if those goals are met, then we are willing to have a conversation. So is Israel. So everybody else is as well. So this is not something that should be a crazy statement. Everyone else just saying, we don't care about the hostages and we don't care about Hamas staying in power. We did, by Tuesday, you better just put your arms down or else we're going to hand over a state. That's the problem. They are incentivizing, as you mentioned, all of the above. I want to go back to Judah's idea, though, about the billboard thing, because I think it's a brilliant idea. It took me a moment. I was thinking to myself, I know billboards, it's an old school way of thinking. And is it enough? And will we just push people into their corners? Is it going to make people polarized and this and that? And what I realized is I don't care about the people who are already polarized. I don't care about the people who already hate and are already in that camp where everything they write sounds like Nazi propaganda. We're talking about a lot of people are still in that middle ground where they don't know what's going on. And a lot of them are being drawn over because of things like TikTok and things like Tucker. They don't understand it and they think they're getting information. So this is a very simple way. I recall in my youth, there was an ad campaign all over Arizona, and it was just really strange messages. And then at the bottom of the billboard, it just said, stay tuned for more. But there was no product, there was no date, there was no information. Everybody was talking, and they would just pop up every couple of months. There'd be another one. And at the end of the year, it turned out it was an ad for the billboard company to show you, see how visible we can be. And everybody in the state was talking about it. So if you can do something like that, where you pick one lie and you say, lie, New York Times headline, starving boy. Reality, genetic disorder, confirmed by doctors. Correction, weeks later, quiet, bottom of the page, done. And a QR code to get more information, to be enlightened, go here, or a website. And then you do that. One lie per billboard. Lie, Israel's blocking aid. Reality, this many trucks have gone in with tons of food. Come here for more information. Just
87% of trucks have been hijacked by Hamas. But also the picture of one of the hostages, Aviatar David, I'm definitely botching his first name, but he actually looks like a Holocaust survivor. He actually put his picture up because his picture's not being released anywhere. Put his picture up all over America, asking, did we forget about the hostages? Do we not care about the hostages? Because this is not getting shown. And here's the thing, I think why it's so important to bring this stuff up to people that are listening to our show. And yes, obviously, we're talking about a major theme of this show is Israel and Hamas, because this is the biggest lies that are being perpetrated right now. This is what Goebbels did in Nazi Germany. This was his specific job. If you tell a lie enough, people will believe it.
That's his quote.
Right. This is exactly what he did. And put his picture up in Times Square. Make people remember, make the president remember that there are hostages still. And when you look at the picture lines of people collecting food, it's so deceiving. The reality is it's 100 degrees out there right now. Okay. If any of us were to be standing on line for food, you could take pictures of any food line in America or go to any church for people waiting for food and snap pictures of it. And there's an extremely emotional response that you will get from that picture. And it could be taken so out of context. That's, again, the picture tells 1,000 words, right?
By the way, some of the photos that have come out of like the kids looking downtrodden with their faces pushing through the fence, holding the thing up. You know what's interesting about that? Why are there kids in those lines? The GHF is operating outside of town. Every expert has said the only people who can make that journey, especially with Hamas trying to kill everybody along the way, which means they're running, are adult age men. They are. They have been very clear about this. It's just a fact. Women and children are not making that journey on a regular basis unless they are taken there deliberately for the photo op. And so people just don't know this. So they see the picture, they have an emotional response, and yeah, our heart breaks because a wide-eyed kid with sunken eyes is trying to push her face through a fence. The question becomes, why is that kid there? And once you ask that question, there is no way to come out the other side of that conversation without realizing that you've been manipulated.
And also, a lot of those pictures are not even from Gaza. A lot of them are from Syria, Raqqa, Syria, and those are Yazidi kids. I mean, that's been proven. Yeah, they have the original images. So yes, you're correct on that one. There is a ridiculous amount of manipulation. And back to what Judo, proposed earlier, even the war-torn Gaza people have an amazing, very effective war room where they pump out propaganda bullshit on a daily basis on a mass scale. The word goes out. We need to see videos of little kids eating sand. And next thing you know, TikTok is flooded with kids pretending to eat sand or,
No, the parents are actually forcing them to eat sand and filming it
Fantastic.
while they do it
Right.
because they're just fantastic people.
I would like to think that most of these people that are doing this stuff to these kids is not actually their parents. I would love to believe that these are just the bad actors that are doing it. But you see some of these videos where it's the actual parents encouraging their kids. There was that video of the mother in an Israeli hospital. She came from Gaza. She was getting an organ transplant from a dead Israeli to her son, and she was smirking and smiling.
Paid for by the Israeli government.
Paid for by the Israelis. And they asked her, why are you smirking? And she said, you guys care about life. We don't care about life. And they said, what do you want your kid to grow up to be? And she said, a shaheed, a suicide bomber.
Yeah, a martyr.
These are the people that you're trying to, rationalize with and treat as if they are, just ordinary, hungry people. A lot of them are possibly, but a lot of them are absolutely sick. And they believe that the world to come is more important than this world. What do the dead women get when they go to heaven? Like they tell the guys they're getting 70 virgins or a 70-year-old virgin.
They get to sit beside Muhammad and Allah and probably get railed and raped by them because that's pretty much what their culture is.
So Trump just announced, by the way, again, going back to a point Mend always brings up, is 20,000 Russian soldiers died last month. Okay, there's hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians that have died since that war started, which is before the October 7th massacre. There's so much death and so much destruction, and none of it gets spoken about. People really have to start asking themselves that question. Why is nobody talking about it? I think the reason is obvious, is because that doesn't bring people together like anti-Semitism. I mean, when you look at what's going on around in America, around the world, thank God Russians and Ukrainians aren't getting beaten up because of their belief systems. Jews are. And that's such an insane concept and thought, Golan, is that there are so many conflicts, so many wars, and nobody in America would say, well, don't let this Russian hockey player play, or let's beat him up on the ice or kill him on the ice. But where are all those people that are so pro-Russia or anti-Russia rallying at Russian events? I mean, unless I missed the memo, I haven't seen any of it.
You haven't missed the memo, and you nailed the reason already. So, I mean, I could belabor this point, but nothing brings a crowd together like Jew hatred. And these days, it's the only thing that anybody talks about, which means that if you're going to pass the purity test of the left, one of the things you have to do, like being anti-racist used to be the thing they talked about. Now you have to be what do they call it? Zionist. And isn't that the wink, wink way of saying Jew hates? Right. So this is exactly what you must do in order to qualify to be part of the clubhouse. So that's the reason why you don't get any points for being anti-Russian. You get points for having a Ukrainian flag in your bio, but that's less than having a Palestinian flag in your bio. It's the old thing of what is the hierarchy of victim? And whichever one if you can be the most victim-y, then you win. And if you can't be that, you better sympathize with that or else. That's where we are. So that's why nobody's talking about it, because they don't get points for it.
Also, Mend, going back to this, I think there's with conservatives, conservatives have a huge problem is we don't prop each other up. And everybody strokes each other that knows each other, but nobody's propping up the next person. It's this bizarre thing in conservative world where I got to give Rogan credit for, because he's created a whole media outlet of jackasses, but nonetheless, he has supported the fellow comedians, sadly, all these people that are lockstep with his ideological views, but that's not happening in other places. You don't see conservatives raising up conservative influence voices. You just do not witness that and do not see that. And there's something really messed up about this.
I don't know. I mean, yes. And to some extent, you're correct. If you look at it through another lens, like Charlie Kirk keeps on having on fantastic conservatives, sometimes not so fantastic. I think he did a Tucker thing. But for the most part, that guy's out there. He's on campus,
Oh, he's amazing. Yes, you're right. He's one guy. You're 100%. You're correct. And he tries. There's no doubt Charlie Kirk is doing yeoman's work. But there are a lot of other people out there that are not getting the shine.
For sure. I think that's accurate, and I'm not sure what to make of it. I think a lot of these people are in it for the money. They're in it for their own fame and money, and they think that by uplifting someone else, somehow it deranks them, or it'll impede on the audience, so they don't want to share. It's basically not sharing, right? But then you have others that are doing fantastic jobs at it. So I say just, let's focus on the guys that are doing great and try to tune out the ones that are not. Like the Tucker Carlsons out there. I would love to tune that guy out. He went from such a prominent position at Fox to interviewing a man who said he gave Obama a BJ. Like, what is going on with this guy with his weird, ridiculous laugh? I mean, it's sad to see what's happened to that guy, but the war with Israel will be over soon, and he'll be left with his reputation in shambles. That's going to be the takeaway. The Gaza war is going to be over. All of the haters are going to have to die down because they're not going to have all those talking points to talk about on a daily basis. It's how to, talk about the starving kids or whatever it is. And then what? Then they're back to doing nothing. They're going to be, I hope, way less relevant.
I hope and pray that you are right on all of those fronts, that the war will be over soon. My thinking, unfortunately, call me a pessimist, is that when the war is over, the war against the Jews worldwide will not be. And my fear is that just as it was before, it will continue to be your purity test. If you don't hate the Jews, it's not enough. It's what Mamdani said, actually. He used his couched language, like when they say anti-Zionist. He said, I call these people PEPs, progressives except Palestine. And so he put a line in the sand. If you want to be part of this new woke party, this is one of the things you must be okay with. And you didn't watch a bunch of people come out and say, this guy's nuts. Well, actually, you did. At first, there were a couple that actually said, what the hell is wrong with this guy? They quickly shut up or kowtowed completely and said, I'm going to support him. And we're watching people who I actually agree with on most topics and who were anti-Mamdani now supporting him. So I have a feeling it's going to remain in that purity test zone. And to your point, Judah, I think you're 100% right. We have a real problem in the Republican Party and conservatives in general that basically, besides Charlie Kirk, I've been thinking about it since you asked the question. I can't think of another influencer, we're going to call him an influencer, that is propping up other influencers that are like-minded. I mean, he propped up Riley Gaines. He did Brett Cooper. Candace Owens went off the rails, but he was the one who initially brought her into the fold. So he was at least trying. He had a bunch. I think Michael Knowles started out with Charlie Kirk as well. So there were a lot of people that he was at least helping their voice to be heard, using his own clout to bring them to the public sphere. I mean, can you think of anybody else doing that?
You know who used to do it a lot? I mean, Hannity does it a bit. O'Reilly used to do it a lot. Gutfeld does it quite a bit too. They've been with him for years, these people. He does try. So, but that was a big thing with O'Reilly. And obviously, right, like I said, you don't have Jesse Waters without him, but that was a big thing of his. I mean, he really tried. I want to get to one last thing, which is the French government has put on hold evacuations from Gaza over a post by a Gazan student accused of anti-Semitic content on her social media posts. And it's funny how CNN doesn't get exactly into it, but it's pretty much kill all the Jews and on and on. My question is, and obviously I don't call for violence. I don't know what the solution is with people like Carney. Trump seems to know how to deal with them and from a power lever. But as far as their influence, I mean, let's be real. It's still France. It's still the UK. It's still Europe. Go on. I don't know what they are doing is just mind blowing. I don't know why people in France are putting up with this. They're broke. They're being
I don't
invaded.
know that they are putting up with it. That's the interesting part is that, what was he at? 19%? Is that what we
He
looked at?
is, but again, when you put all the other leftist parties in, it still gives him a coalition.
Sure, but he is still doing the playbook that we always are talking about. He is looking for the scapegoat. He's lighting other people's houses on fire so you don't notice that his is sunken into the bog, right? So this is the same thing that is being done over and over and over again. France, under this guy, under Macron, has welcomed the movement that doesn't believe Jews have the right to exist. And now they're suddenly going to, clutch their pearls because the mask slipped? If they weren't paying attention, there was no mask. They have been saying Antifada and Jihad since day one, and that's what that means. So the fact that somebody decided to put it in stark black and white terms, I want to kill the Jews, just like, by the way, there was a post today that Deborah Messing pointed out where not an influencer, some guy who only has 200 followers, put up a post saying, start treating all the Jewish influencers just like the IDF, and we'll find them all in dumpsters, explicit threats. And right away, there was mobilization to the FBI and everybody else. But this is not new. The fact that they're shocked by it means that either A, they have been lying to themselves, or B, they haven't been paying attention. By the way, it's that they've been lying to themselves or they've been lying to us, because there's no way we don't know what these things mean. The fact that so many reform young liberal Jews right now are supporting Mamdani means that mind virus, whatever you want to call the mind virus, has infected too many people. And it's either that they believe it or they think that if I don't just sign on to this ludicrousness, I will be cast out into the cornfield. So therefore, I will go ahead and lay my head gently into the guillotine, because that way, at least nobody's going to label me a racist.
It all comes back to our education system. This is all from the education system that has been brainwashing these kids for the last 20 years with this socialist, insane agenda. America's bad. Everybody else is good. Muslims are great. Jihadis are great. The people that hate America are great. And America is just terrible, full of sin. And the only way to atone for it is to sacrifice yourself. You got to put yourself on the line and stand up for the most vile person who hates America. And that's how you redeem yourself. And these
I
people
think you said
it
it better the other day when you said it was hereditary. It's just in the DNA. I don't think this has. I just think this is just who they are from childhood, from birth to adulthood. Yes, obviously the universities give them a stamp of approval with their thinking, but this is another thing that Jews like us have to be vocal against is other Jews. And it's painful, and we used to not do it. It was one of those taboo things to do, and we held it in for far too long. And you're finally starting to see rabbis calling people out and doing these things. But we have to beat these people down with thought and ideas. Just that they're wrong. I mean, I don't know how to say it.
Oh, I think you said it very, very well, actually.
Yeah, I think the liberal kids, and that does come from the parents a lot, but a lot of it also comes from the education system. And then you talk about non-liberal kids. I'm just talking about regular kids at college campuses. I mean, you see Asian kids in the Hamas protest camps. What do they have anything to do with it? Where'd they get this from? And some of the most vile anti-Israel Jew hatred is coming out of those kids. And you're like, what is your connection? Like, what? It's because everything they've been told. I had a friend whose kid, she's half Asian, and the first thing she told her dad when he told her about October 7th, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, those Israelis, they're always trying to steal land. That was the first thing out of her mouth. I'm like, you did a terrible job at educating your kid. Your kid doesn't know shit. Your kid literally has no idea what they're talking about, and they are just spewing hatred. The hatred that has haunted these people for millennia, and your kid is propagating that.
I'm curious, man. I want to ask you a question. So we know that Qatari money has flooded into the education system from kindergarten all the way up through university. We know that they have put more money into the American education system than anybody else in the world. And we can actually mark from the time the money started coming in to all the jihadi teachers that started getting hired, to the people who started getting installed as presidents who would say that, threatening to kill Jews requires context, and all the rest. Can see the trajectory of these people being indoctrinated and brainwashed from day one. But we couldn't see it at the moment because it was so far-fetched. It felt like something out of a sci-fi movie, number one. And number two, it was happening so subtly over years and years and years and years. So let's talk about that anticipation, that defense. I'm curious. You're saying you failed parents, but what would you suggest be done?
Go on 4 years ago. I mean, you can listen to episodes of Ben Stein. I said this is coming down really quickly. I said, especially when we left Kabul the way we did, this is one of those things you could close your eyes and say, I'm not going to see the fallout from what one move did. But if you look at history, I'm not even talking about you have to go back to 50, 80 years. You could literally go back to the fall of Iran. This doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what cause and effect have. It just does not. We have think tanks in Washington that are 98 years old. The only way they get people in there is by offering them free meals on a daily basis. And I'm not kidding. So if anybody's hungry in Washington, every day the Heritage Foundation and every other group offers a free lunch for when they have speakers there. Go for the free lunches. We are so jackass behind the times. They spent God knows how long working on this 2025 project instead of other projects they could have been working on. So this is the battle we're up against. This is truly the battle we're up against. Man, that's just my humble thoughts on that.
Yes, you're correct. It's been going on for a long time. And you're also correct. You've been calling it out for a long time. What gets me is that this administration seems like they're on the ball with almost everything besides Qatar. You talk about Qatar paying. I mean, this came out. Qatar facilitated the payments to Tucker Carlson to interview the head of the foreign minister of Iran, right? Was it the prime minister or the foreign? I think it was the foreign minister.
I didn't see the payment part. I just saw that they set it up.
They set it up and paid him. That's the same government that put out a hit on our president. Our president is locking elbows, arm in arm with Qatar on everything when they are the ones that are destroying this country. I don't get how they don't see that. I don't understand how he doesn't see that Qatar has funded almost everything from that helps the radical left. Doesn't help the right, doesn't help conservatives. It's all about sowing discontent and hatred of America, which is everything the left stands for. So why don't they see that?
Because they do see it. The problem is Qatar has done such a brilliant job, again, of integrating themselves. We have a base over there. So they have done such an amazing job of being the devil that is openly the devil, but every once in a while offers you an olive branch of some sort. They have done this so well. And you're completely right. Listen, when Trump took the plane, we all said we did not agree with that move. So you're 100% correct.
It was a very cheap bribe. But Trump in the past has talked about Qatar, and he said that they fund terror. This is the same guy. So he remembers there must be some sort of calculus. I'm hoping that behind the scenes, he's getting them to change their ways. That's the only thing that I could put together that makes sense, where he would have a heart-to-heart sit down with them and say, listen, it's over. No more of this shit. You're not doing this anymore. You're going to have to make peace with Saudi Arabia and the moderate Arab states, and you're going to have to tone down your Al Jazeera nonsense and all the rhetoric that comes out of that thing, all the hate that it spews on a daily basis, and we're going to have to figure something out with the Abraham Accords. You're going to have to get on board.
I love your optimism. There's no way you actually believe that's happening, though. Don't forget.
Well, not the Abraham Accords, but the rest
of it.
No,
but hopefully. None of it. Do you think that they're having a conversation behind closed doors? It's ludicrous. Qatar has just over 3 million people in it. It's a nothing burger. It's not even a real place. It's like an amusement park on a busy day. And more money comes out of that place towards terrorist bank accounts and funding Hamas and everything else. And of course, paying for everything in the United States and paying $10 billion to France so they can recognize Palestine and all the rest. They're the ones who finance the Muslim Brotherhood. These people also know how to play both sides better than anybody. They don't just host the U.S. military. We talk about have a base there. They don't have a base there. CENTCOM is in Qatar. That's the U.S. military central command headquarters is literally based at the, Al Udeid Air Base in Doha. So strategically, it allows us no wiggle room. And morally, we have to just shut up because we're fighting terror from inside the country that funds it. So no, I don't think we say anything. And I think that also so much money is coming into the country as a result that we kind of play the calculus. Now, if I really saw some moves to shut down money coming from Qatar into universities, shut down Qatar money going to think tanks, shut down money from Qatar going to government officials or through intermediaries to government officials, etc., then maybe I'd start to believe it. But until that happens, I don't believe for a moment that anyone is doing anything about Qatar. And I think you're right that Qatar is the number one problem that we have.
And the number two problem that we have, just to close up, is, there are reports today, reports that Ghislaine Maxwell is being moved prisons to a federal prison. And the reason I bring this up is I want to get back to what we were discussing yesterday about transparency. So I just don't understand why they just can't come out, have Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche. You don't have to get into the weeds on a subject like this, but just explain what you're doing, because now you're going to have, again, all the clickbaiters, all the grifters that make money off this stuff. They got to get ahead of these things. And it's just so annoying to watch this go on.
I hadn't heard this news story, so I'm having a very honest reaction right now. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, if they're just doing this and trying to sweep it under the rug quietly with no press releases, no public statements, it smells like cover-up theater. It doesn't feel like there's any other reason to do this quietly and in secret. And I'm not one of those conspiracy theory people, but come on, I at least am aware of how it will look to those people. Transparency is the bare minimum. You keep saying it, Judah, and I keep supporting it. I think you're 1000% right that Caroline should be doing a press conference every day, that Pam Bondi should be doing a weekly fireside chat. Let us know what's going on, even if it's just hey, FYI, we're doing this. Here's the reason why. Don't get into your head about it. Now you know optics are good, and then we can move her anywhere we want. The fact that they're doing this without saying a word, and I'm learning about it live and in person, I feel like, how stupid are you?
Don't hold back. Don't hold back. Anyway, I don't think we've seen the end of this. I think it's premature to start calling it a cover-up or sweeping it under the rug.
No, we're not saying that.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's how it's going to look to those people.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying is, didn't you learn your lesson when you released that memo? Like sort of like try to get ahead of what you're about to do by announcing it to the public that you're going to do it. I mean, now all of a sudden you've given Benny Johnson and Steve Bannon and every single grifter out there, you've given them ammo to keep the story going.
Yep. That's exactly. And by the way, even the people who aren't grifters, I guess it kind of makes them grifters, but like the Megyn Kellys, who I feel like she's mostly an honest broker, but she recognizes where the clicks are coming from. So she also decided to mention it on stage with Charlie Kirk at TPUSA, right? And push it a couple of times more because it allows her to have that audience like we talked about yesterday. That doesn't mean she's getting a check from Qatar or from a bad actor, but it does mean she is getting a check from Spotify. And that also matters.
Men, final thoughts?
Spotify doesn't pay all that much, but yes. I mean, a lot of it, I think I watched that thing with Charlie Kirk and her, and it seemed like she was just saying the things that she thought people wanted to hear. It's just the regular standard talking points that they all do. They're all doing it these days, saying blah, blah, blah. They messed up. And for the most part, I kind of agree with a lot. And we all do. We agree that they messed up with the messaging on that. But let's see where this goes.
Look, I will see where it goes. But if the transfer is routine, then tell us that. If it's for safety, then explain that to us. Doing it in silence is going to fuel what all those conspiracy theory people are going to suspect, that the people who have power are not being held accountable or whatever it is. They don't get the luxury of silence anymore. That's all it is.
What I would say is that they transfer to a federal jail and then she spills the beans. Everybody's going to be like, oh, great. That was the move. Da, da, da. They cut a deal with her and she released it all. However, if they transfer her to a federal jail and she winds up dead, everybody's going to say, oh, there it is. The cover up. They're hiding it. They did this. So again, we got to wait and see how it plays out.
You wouldn't have liked an announcement ahead of time?
I don't think it's the most pertinent thing. Moving her from one jail to another jail, who cares? I want to hear about the list.
I agree
want to
with
hear
you.
about what she has to say.
I agree with you. I don't care. But there are a lot of people out there that do care.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it's a missed opportunity. They had an opportunity to show that they're being a little bit more transparent, and they missed it again. But I also don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. I just think it's a missed opportunity. It's not like a complete fumble.
But I think those missed opportunities compound. And, if you think about, someone was saying to me yesterday, I don't hate Smotrich, but I do hate when he speaks out loud to the press. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you're saying that, not that you disagree with some of the stuff that he says, but you don't want there to be ammunition that the bad actors of the world can use against Israel. That makes sense to me. So it's the same thing here.
And that is accurate. I agree with that. I think Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and there's another guy out there with a beard. The stuff that they say, and they're saying it to their base, but it's used as jet fuel ammunition against the state of Israel.
100%.
But again, I will say this, thank God for them, because they are the ones that kept the coalition together, and they are the ones that did not capitulate, especially when Biden was trying to pressure Bibi into the worst deals in the world. We don't have thousands of Hamas prisoners being let out of prisons.
You can call them what they are, murderers.
Those guys are also the ones that orchestrated this idea to stop flowing aid into Gaza, which was a failed strategy from a tactical standpoint. Because of the pressure from Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they did not want food going in. And it added a lot of anti-Israel ammunition to the people that are saying, look, they're starving. And now you have this whole bullshit starving narrative that ran wild around the world.
Well, I'm not going to blame that on Smotrich, and we could blame that on one specific thing. I mean, let's be honest. It's a New York Times picture that set everything into motion, and it was done.
But you got to that from the initial decision that was
made.
What?
I got to push back. I know I don't want to harp on this because we got to wrap this thing up, but I will just say, as someone who does a podcast called Jew Can't Handle the Truth, where I go over deep dives.
My favorite podcast, by the way.
Thank you very much,
That's
sir.
my favorite.
You're a god amongst men. But in 2023 and again in 2024, they tried to push famine and starvation as a narrative, and it didn't land. Here it landed because of this. You're right, but they were already trying. So they would have found some way into it.
Hey,
to blame these guys for what these bad actors would have done anyway, I feel is a little bit of the wrong path.
They will use every excuse in the book to vilify Israel. Always. Settler, colonialists, and all the other nonsense and bullshit. I am not absolving them, and I'm not saying that anything will counter that.
Let's wrap it up. Who are you listening to, Golan? Who let's push people that we listen to and like.
Look, I will admit that lately, because I've been sick, I have listened to a lot less than I used to. But my go-to guy when it comes to the Middle East is still Dan Senor. I think that he is a brilliant dude. I like the way he asks questions. I like the way he digs deep. And beyond that, I have been listening to our podcast over and over again because it's the most informative podcast on the market.
And who are you following or listening to?
So I got a couple. My daily go-tos is the President's Daily Brief and Morning Wire. Those are two that are fantastic daily shows. I believe they have 2 shows a day. What Really Matters with Walter Russell Mead is a fantastic podcast. Trigonometry is a great one.
I do listen to Trigonometry every episode. I love it.
Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, FDD Morning Brief. It's out, I think, 2 or 3 times a week. Excellent. Fantastic. And if you have time, we do the Mark Levin show, Charlie Kirk. I mean, those are a little longer. But as Golan said, call me back. Once a week, I think it's a podcast. Excellent. If you want to know what's going on inside the Middle East and especially in Israel, that one is great. And Ask Haviv Anything is another great one. from a journalist in Israel who's not, pro-government. He's just tells it like it is. I don't even know where he stands politically.
I do, but I still listen to him. And I will say that Barry Weiss is another one that I actually more often than not will check out. She often has wonderful guests on there, wonderful segments. And of course, and this is not blowing smoke, this is true. I listen to every episode of The World According to Ben Stein with Judah and Ben Stein.
That's a great
I think that it's one of the most honest, informative shows. You mentioned the other day something about Ben Stein being someone who taught you not to be afraid to broach certain subjects. And it is one of the few podcasts that is not afraid to go there on topics that are a third rail for other people. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, I thank you for that, and I thank you both for that. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the show on Spotify, on Apple. You can find us at the Daily Cheat Sheet on Substack, on YouTube, Instagram. You can find us on X at TD Cheat Sheet. And of course, you can find us on Truth Social. We hope everybody has an amazing weekend. And we want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.